All right, let's get it started. No more hanging tight. All right. So we're going to start off today. We had some developments in Telegram, actually. So Diggles, one of the co-founders of Constellation, dropped some pretty exciting news and very, very insightful information. So they're going to have a meeting later on with the Undersecretary of Defense, right? So the people who have been following me, I've been sort of keeping close tabs on anything and pretty much everything that's related to the federal arena. I posted in December about the National Defense Authorization Act, where President Biden signed into law. It was over $800 billion in funding. And a lot of the areas that he signed into law where there was funding is completely applicable to the things that Constellation has been doing with the federal government. One of which is this universal blockchain kit. It's now called Iron Spider, and it has multiple stakeholders. So see, this is Constellation down here with the hypergraph, but you also have CGI Federal, and you have Symbichain. So one of the things that they've been doing with the federal government is this secure information sharing. So here is the blockchain, if you will, that they built for the federal government. It's a layer 1 network, and they built it for US Transcom. And part of US Transcom is this thing called the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. And all of these craft members, here's the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. I'll share it here with you. So this is multiple stakeholders. You've got pretty much every major airline in the United States that it's a part of this. And what they do here is they bid for contracts. But you don't want anybody knowing what you're doing, right? So all of this information has got to be secured and done in a secure way. And part of the people that are involved in this is Symbichain. So Symbichain here, this is on Simba's website. Simba is partnering with Constellation to bring data interoperability using blockchains for the US Air Force. So that sort of sums up really quickly to get everybody up to speed on what they've been doing. So to get back to this, I mean, this is really exciting news. I mean, this could be any number of things. This could be, there's been developments with drones that I've talked about. This could be securing GPS signals, which I've talked about. You know, they demoed to the government years ago how they could secure GPS signals. And I've shared this old demo that they did, where they were driving down the freeway, and the location that they were doing, everything was validated on chain. All of the data of them driving down the freeway was all validated on chain. And then just recently, they actually demoed this use case to people, to a bunch of industry leaders privately, but nobody outside of, you know, this small subset of people has actually seen this new demo. So I'm going to be sharing with you this new demo that they shared with everybody. So this is secure information sharing between Constellation and Symbichain. This is pretty crazy stuff, and I'm really excited for the whole community to see it. And yes, I got the go ahead to share this. So without further ado, I'm just going to let them do the talking.
Yeah, perfect. I have my presentation up here, so we'll just go through this first. So yes, thank you, Benjamin. as Benjamin said, my name is James. I'm a protocol engineer here at Constellation Labs, and this use case that we're going to explore today for tracking and tracing GPS tagged events is incredibly versatile across and kind of widespread across the blockchain space, right? I tend to think of it as because supply chain and blockchain chain connects. Anyway, the use case that we're particularly going to concern ourselves with today, and that metagraphs really have an advantage with, are addressing the generation of data on these edge devices, such as airplanes, delivery vehicles, anything that might be moving through physical space. And the generation of that data can then be sent to and aggregated by these metagraphs and validated, and then become a data source for external events or external triggering of additional business processes. So here we have a very brief explanation of a very crucial arena for this use case, which is the spoofing of GPS events. And this, as technology just becomes cheaper and cheaper, and kind of digital malfeasance, let's say, becomes something that's more widely accepted by adversaries. We really have to build in mechanisms to verify the veracity of data and make sure that if we can constrain enough degrees of freedom, we can have confidence in what we're actually doing, and in particular the humans that are acting in these, as caretakers for all the people on board or the packages, can make decisions in real time, knowing that the veracity of their instruments and their data that they're basing their decisions on is 100%, or as reliable as we can get to 5 nines of reliability. Okay, so hoping to have motivated the use case well enough, let's go ahead and hop into the presentation. I believe you can see my screen.
We're good.
All right. Okay, so kind of this slide is a bit of a reiteration of the previous statements, but just some other these GPS tagged events are very, you can do food supply chain tracking, you can do GPS spoofing, you can do many different types of things. And here I listed a couple of, off the top of my head, delivery fulfillment contracts or active fleet monitoring and anomaly detection are two things that we're going to kind of hone in today, and I'll try to motivate how metagraphs can be used in these applications. And then a question you might ask is why we use metagraphs in this case? Why are metagraphs better suited for for applications in these GPS tagged events? In particular, the things that I point to are the ability to validate and securely communicate arbitrary data across network domain boundaries, and really it lets you build in this coupling as Benjamin, or as Ben Jorgensen referenced a second ago, that we can just couple to Web 2 processes very easily. So here are just a list of the 5 features. We've kind of already covered these in the previous 2 demos, but just so they're out here in a list, the things that we kind of take advantage of, and I'll point back to, are the separable levels of validation. So we'll take a look at what we mean by validation and how that comes out. The support for arbitrary data types, as we've been saying. The ability for data movement to be guaranteed by a majority of distributed peers. So this builds resilience into the system, as well as segmenting who needs to have access to what data, and allows you to better define the areas of interest. And then the last 2 are really kind of the ability to, once you have consensus on this data stream, you can then create an oracle for consumption by other external services, as well as something that's pretty unique to metagraphs, which is the ability to ingest external API data during the consensus process. And that is something that's pretty unique to the Constellation metagraph platform. Okay, sorry for the brightness, but the current approach we're going to do today, the demo we're going to go over is, like I said, it's concerning these GPS tagged events, but the actual details of the implementation are an EVM bridge metagraph that's interacting with a partner of ours, Simba Blocks, our Simba chain that hosts this blocks platform. And so we're going to go between a Constellation metagraph and a Simba EVM, and we're going to take these GPS events, validate them, and then transmit them from one chain to the other. And just this little GIF on the right, you can see, or you can imagine, just a picture of there's some trajectory that this little vehicle is creating. There's all these metrics that we're gathering from it, such as elevation, velocity, the actual lat long, in addition to other things. And then finally, we'll take a look at in the data when we look at the demo. We'll see how we ingest valid data, how we reject invalid data, and then we'll see the synchronization of data across the chains. Really simple picture of how the data is going to flow. So it gets generated at the vehicle, at the edge device, sent to the metagraph for validation and consensus. And then finally, after following consensus, it is pushed to the external delivery EVM contract in this instance. So just a very simple kind of L that we're doing. To hop into the validation that I was talking about, this is really one of the biggest parts of what a metagraph can do, right? It is applying that validation and making sure that your data is up to date. I'm sorry, follows your standards. My timer, okay, there we go. So the most basic of checks that we can do, are schema checks, right? This is, you might imagine that you have JSON as your data type, and you require that there are certain fields in the JSON, and that requirement is like a foundational thing, because another validation you do might be that field exists and another field, and the addition of these two fields is greater than some number, or just as some toy example. And so the ability to do schema checks and enforcements on what data has been given and is guaranteed as good at the source is particularly useful in conducting audits and things after the fact, because it forces you to, at the time of data generation, you're already asking the questions that you might not realize you want to ask until after an incident happens and you have to look back at the data. So the ability to enforce these basic validations is a pretty crucial step. But that's just basically the simplest type of validation that we can do, is these schema checks and form type checks of the data. Other checks that we can do can take into account contextual information. So here we see a little cutout of that trajectory from earlier, and in green is the expected trajectory. Right? Maybe it's a delivery vehicle, and this is the path that it was expected to go. But for some reason, the driver couldn't go just south of Creedmoor here in this green section. They had to take a detour and go out this way. And so we can alert and say, okay, well, are those updates actually valid? Are they being spoofed? Are they outside the bounds of the expected lat-long trajectory? But even more so, we can go further than that. We can look at the deltas between historical, or segments of historical data. We can look at the magnitudes, the values of the data themselves. We can also apply arbitrary functions to segments of that data. And so this gives you just a really, really powerful toolkit of different types of ways to analyze the data as it's coming in, before it even keeps going down the rest of the pipeline. Okay, and then finally, I think, to return to what I was saying is the defining feature of metagraphs, which is this ability to enrich data, right? You can have that as part of the validation as well, right? So here we see a torque and RPM graph, and we might say there's a safe operating area, right, where the majority of these points are, and any points that are outside are considered hazardous points, or something like a sensor might be failing, or there's maybe something actually wrong with the vehicle. And so this sort of anomaly detection can also be included to inspect the data. as well as, like I said, to enrich the data for validation purposes. Okay, seeing as I don't have a ton of time left, I'm just gonna, there's only 2 more slides, I promise. So this is the data we're gonna be running through. I showed this really briefly. I know it's a bunch of numbers and things, but look at the colors. So we're gonna go line by line, and we're gonna have a script that's sending this data. And the green ones should be accepted, the red ones should be rejected, and the yellow ones are actually race conditions. So it depends on which one is there first. So that's a bit of a bit nuanced, but that is what we're going to see. All right. So here we have a Metagraph example that's already running in the background, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the script to send the updates. So now we see updates that are being sent. And if we look down here on the right, so it was able to, it found 1 update in the L1, and then in the L0, it got 1 update in ordinal, what was that? Ordinal 86. Okay, so we're just gonna leave these 2 things running, and we're gonna go ahead and go to the front end, and look at that. We see that in ordinal 86, we have 1 event. It is still being loaded onto the Simba platform at the moment. But let's just go ahead and we can dig into, and it updates, and we get a couple more. So, but we already clicked on 86. So this was the data in ordinal 86, right? So the vehicle ID here, we see the lat long positioning, maybe what its velocity was, and different characteristics. We can see potentially if we click on this guy. Well, so far we only have a single event for this particular ID, but if we were to have multiple events, it would show up as a list of things here. I apologize for that.
Oops. So there you have it. Like in a sense, what they just proved was validating a transaction from one chain on another chain. Snapshot 86. Proof. Constellation with Simba EVM. I mean, that right there is pretty groundbreaking stuff, if you ask me. And it's kind of like what I was getting at too here. A lot of applications talk about things being done on chain, but if you look under the hood, you realize that a lot of this stuff isn't actually done on chain. It's done off chain. And so that doesn't really secure anything. But with Constellation's network, you can literally do everything on chain. All of the data can be run and validated on chain. And that is a huge difference here. And you don't have to replace anything. You can use your existing platform. So what I was trying to point out here with the Hive Mapper guys, they don't have to change anything. They can still use their amazing app. I think that this is an amazing tool. Or the teleport. These people can still use their existing applications and still have it do what it is that they're doing. But the difference here is, like with Hive Mapper, they could take these cameras, and each one of these cameras can become a node right away. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in here, but that demo was pretty amazing. Let me. Oh, Barry, you got to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Woo!
What'd you think about that, Barry?
Well, first I thought, yeah, Dagnum, hey, how are you? Hey, Patriot Brad. Hey, Court. Yeah, I thought, well, the first part about, Constellation, the team meeting with the Undersecretary of the Department of Defense. What other crypto company has met with the DoD? Probably none besides Constellation. I would, venture. So that should speak to the efficacy, importance, trust in the technology. And I hope that anyone that's building on another network, which are all fantastic for their different reasons, is paying attention to Constellation. If the Department of Defense is paying attention to Constellation, I think most people should, hopefully. And that's enough for me in that regard. But in terms of what you just showed, Dagnum, this most recent post, I think the sky's the limit here with what can be created, with what can be done, where data can be stored, where data can be kept, etc. So hopefully the Hive Mapper team give Constellation and HGTP a very serious look. I think what Hive Mapper are doing is very important, and I love the tangibility aspect to their company, to the project with the nodes, but would love to see Hive Mapper consider Constellation's hypergraph for some component of the business.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what amazes me is we've seen the partnership with Simba, right? But now we're starting to see tangible, actual results, and what intrigues me as well, right? So we're working with a DAG, but yet we're working through an EVM, and we're making on-chain transactions here that are proving data in transit, both, as you just said, Dagnum, like even from a video feed. I mean, we're seeing the potential here. And what really intrigues me, though, is like it's almost like Constellation is kind of shifted with the needs of what task is at hand here, so it's like I'm seeing the need the Department of Defense had, and I'm seeing the partnership that formed with Simba. So it's like what intrigues me is anybody that questions the validity of what's happening here. It's like, wow, I mean, they're working with validating data with Simba Chain. So it's in Department of Defense ready. So it's very intriguing. This is my first time seeing this as well. So it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, and it's not just the Department of Defense. I mean, you've also got this National DigiFoundry, which, Intrana is actually part of the National DigiFoundry. And within the National DigiFoundry, you've got multiple stakeholders. You've got the National Science Foundation, you got Space Force, you got the Department of Treasury, and there's different working groups within this system. You got secure information sharing, you got the space working group, you got the financial product tokenization aspect of it, and all of this is being done on chain. And you can clearly see that. I mean, all you have to do is just go to any one of these sites on there, and you can see that this is a Constellation DAG address. So each one of these stakeholders, if you go back, it talks about this is how the funding works, and here's the token itself, the National Digi Token, NDT. So each one of these different working groups has tokens, and they all participate in this. I mean, this is digital assets on chain, and these are all the stakeholders that everybody's been talking about. I mean, you've got NASA, you've got Space Force, you've got IBM, you've got Microsoft, and hundreds of other people that are all participating using blockchain. Oh, Court, you're muted. Oh,
I will comment on that. Hello, Dagnum. Hello, everyone. I have Blake here with me as well, co-founder of Intrana.
What's up, you sexy guys? Love what you guys are building.
What's up, guys? Wow. Congratulations first to the Constellation guys. That is not an easy thing to do, technologically speaking. What they've been able to build, accomplish with their partners, and also a lot of the partnerships that they've gotten. It's just so impressive. So first off, congratulations to those guys. I'm sure the future is very bright, right? But really looking into more of the scalability aspects of what they've built here is unbelievable, and it cannot be overstated, the potential of what this is and what it can do to help people. And when you start looking at all the problems that we've been having with GPS spoofing and different, cruise ships or delivery systems of any kind, be it for goods or people, there's a lot to be done in the realm of immutability. And I'm just really proud of what they're doing. And holy cow, Iron Spider is going to change the world on its own, and it's going to be on Constellation. Like you mentioned, the National DigiFoundry is using this technology. And that means, the U.S. Treasury, when they have to vote for our DAO inside of certain things, they're using that. They have a wallet, as do the Air Force, the Space Force, NASA. It's a very important part of, I think, what is the next 500 to 1,000 years of technology, world peace, and also kind of the golden age of humanity as a whole. So just really excited. I'm kind of blown away. Blake, what did you think, man?
I'll back everything you said there. Just the seamless applicability of everything. Yeah. It can just literally, I'm just driving down the road sometimes and just come up with a random idea, and it's like, oh, metagraphs could apply to that. So not only every small business or super large entities such as the Treasury, NASA, it's so expansive, and we're very fortunate to be here right now as this is all coming together. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, and here you can see for yourself. I mean, I've pointed this out. The this is the Space Working Group. So you've got the National Science Foundation, you've got NASA, Space Force, the Defense Innovation Unit, and many other stakeholders. I think Forward Edge AI is also part of this. I pointed out that they have this Berry 2 satellite that's in space right now, I believe. And so, these are the types of applications that aren't around the corner. I mean, these applications are actually happening right now. So, you've got AI and machine learning. You've got, they're actually building stuff in space. Lots of different types of compounds are actually better built in 0G. But then you also have automation. So you have these satellites and robots that are flying around, and you need blockchain to secure it, because you don't want your adversaries to actually hack into your robots or your satellites and cause havoc. I mean, that would be bad news. And you can secure all of that with blockchain. So blockchain can be used in tons of different ways other than cryptocurrency or a store of value, which most people talk about, because Bitcoin actually seems to dominate this space. But there's actually a whole world of distributed ledger technology that encompasses way more than a store of value or a currency.
It really is about, not just securing the data of the nation, but also just the everyday activities of Americans and people across the world. It's a very important aspect of what's to come in cyber warfare. And we're going to have to be very safe in not just how we conduct ourselves personally, but as governments, as agencies, as enterprises. And when we get down to the very simple, kind of complex at the same time, ironically, world of cryptography, you really, the less moving parts, the better. And the reason that metagraphs, Constellation, HTTP is so important is that respect to all of those primitive data pieces, all those primitive data types, all of the siloed data lakes that currently need to be able to exit, to transfer, to convert, so that everything that they've built can actually be relied upon still, because no one is going to have the capabilities of completely reworking their entire infrastructure. And finally, now they don't have to. And this is a really important step. It's wonderful to see what has been done. I'm blown away. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of speechless. This is crazy.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, and all of that was done on chain. And the other thing is the interoperability there. So I've pointed out that other. Let me see if I can pull it up. That demo that I've showed a bunch of times. Here, this original demo of them driving down the freeway, and securing the information of them driving down the freeway, validating lat-long locations. But the difference between this demo and the one that I just showed you is you're using a different network. And so there's the interoperability. There's the data exchange between two different networks. And so, this is really going to open the door to tons of different applications and use cases. And, with the metanomics coming out, I pointed out the other day about delegators. So here's something that I showed everybody. So this is, Solana Beach, and these are all stakeholders here. So what Constellation is doing now with metanomics and delegators is you're going to be able to have this same type of function. So anybody can be a delegator. So like any one of these VCs or any one of these exchanges like Coinbase, they could become a delegator instantly. And that's going to transform this entire space because of the types of applications that you're going to be able to do on this network that you can't necessarily do on other networks.
Dan, just to go back to something you mentioned before, the securing data on the highway, with the network. That video came out, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 or maybe even 5 years ago. Just imagine how far advanced that technology is now from then. We're in a totally different universe. I don't know what announcements are coming between the government and Constellation. I have no idea, if any, but given how close Constellation is with the government, I would think something's coming, but I have no idea. I just think that, Constellation's tech is a quantum leap ahead of many other, or most other networks. And the reason, I don't know the reason, I'm not really technical, but the proof is in the pudding in terms of who Constellation has in the room, to your point. So, Intrana and, working with, obviously, on HTTP and Department of the Treasury, DOD, you got some big names that these other networks would cream their pants to get in front of, and they haven't been able to. It's because the tech is inferior, or maybe just there are some good aspects to it, but, and plus Constellation's a US-based business. So, made in America, baby.
Yeah, that is absolutely one intriguing thing too. Yeah, like the Made in America, and then you got these public-private, possible relationships that are working, and now we're seeing. I'm still digesting, but we're seeing now proof of the ability to use this network to validate data on chain to be immutable. I think the options end up what I start wondering, because I'm an outside guy looking in there, like you said, Barry, that there's no way to really truly know. And I can speak from experience because I watch all of these, congressional, whether it's the House Armed Services Committee or whatever, right? And anytime they get into any sort of details, they go to a skiff. So I really don't know who's at the helm, but I see Constellation sitting there at the table. And who else has proved to the DoD that they can make this happen, and they're working with Simba, who is a known entity amongst reliable, secure, not looking for that it's a public system. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw those thoughts in there as well.
Yeah, and we can actually get some insights actually maybe to the possibilities and what's coming around the pipeline. The other day I pointed out, I think it was Diggles again, who, it was right before their Metanomics video. He pointed out that he was on a call with Panasonic just before they went live on stream. And he pointed out that they were working with them to implement one of something from their Web 2 side to a Web 3. And then I pointed out, just these snapshot fees, how that could translate. And the application here is enormous, right? So if you look at I'm trying to find the calculator here so I can show you guys. I did another video the other day where I actually walked this out. But here, I'm going to share this tab. So snapshot fees just went live, right? So this is the door Metagraph. So this is Constellation's IoT device. It's just a real simple use case. There's 3,400 of these nodes or IoT devices that are online right now. And each one of these, you can see the snapshot fee here, right? So this one was 8 kilobytes. This one was 5 kilobytes, 7. I mean, you get the point here. And then this is the fee that's associated with that. So it's not a lot per snapshot. But then when you multiply that over thousands of different devices, it can give you a window into what is actually possible. And this is just with door. So like with Panasonic, for example, I think Chris and I just saw that he joined. We walked through the Metanomics and gave an example of, I thought, a pretty conservative number. Now, while we have no idea what Panasonic is thinking about doing, what type of application that they're going to be using, but Panasonic has literally thousands of different use cases and devices and sensors that could be applied here. So I think it's a pretty reasonable estimate to just say something like 50,000 sensors. I mean, when you're talking about a global company like Panasonic, but it could be, anybody. So we'll scale down the kilobyte here. So we'll just use like what was on this snapshot fee. So again, this is the door Metagraph, right? And you can see the different snapshot sizes. I mean, they're anywhere from 8 kilobytes to 11 kilobytes. But if we just stick with 7 kilobytes, and I think when I calculated it out last time, if you did the math, if it was 50,000 sensors instead of being 20,000 snapshots like with the door, it would be about 15 million snapshots a month. And so that would cost roughly $1,900 a month. And so this is with, and the other thing to point out here that I don't know if I emphasized enough when I was doing the Metanomics video, is this is without delegators. This is just staking. So if you implement staking here into this, right now there's 0. And I think a reasonable estimate here, I know offhand several people that have this amount of DAG themselves personally. So, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that they could get something like 10 million DAG staked. But I mean, look at what it did to the number there. I mean, it dropped it. So now all of a sudden the monthly cost here is $400. And then if you do even more than that, I think when soft node staking, if you guys remember that, when that was around, I think the community ended up putting, like over 1 billion DAG was staked. Now, I mean, realistically, are 1 billion DAG going to be staked in something like Panasonic? Probably not. But I think a reasonable estimate here would be 100 million. I think for sure. I think a global company like Panasonic could definitely muster up 100 million DAG. And then what you see here is a net benefit to Panasonic. So they just went from costing money to actually making money. And this is without delegators. So when you put in delegators to that, it's even more, not only for them, but for the end user. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in, but I mean, this is going to open the door for so many more possibilities.
Well, I personally love that delegating. I admittedly have more research to do on it, and that's why. I mean, I really need to finish watching your video. Actually, by the way, from earlier this week or last week, I think it was. But that delegator, I think that the pieces I've seen that shows that it's almost like that original mantra where you put Constellation as the center hub, right? That layer 0 hub that then can reward, and then it works intrinsically between the folks that are looking to build on the network. So because you'll have a collection of those that you could dive into that are maybe an up and coming type of project versus like a Panasonic where they could maybe prove what's going to happen beforehand. So just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, I might step in here. Sorry, guys, I'm doing bath time, so no cameras today. But look, again, the delegators, I've run the math. I've kind of shared it with the Stardust guys. I mean, I think at 80% or less of all potential DAG tokens that can delegate, if it's 80% or less, delegators grow at a faster rate than inflation day one and never dip below. So I think soft staking, we might have gotten like 50% participation, maybe for a quarter or two touch 60. So I don't think it's realistic that we go over 80%. So it's incredibly compelling from, a return on investment opportunity for delegators. They have ability to change the economics themselves for any project that's built on the hypergraph, which is compelling, allows people to participate in a network in a way you don't really see in Web3 very often, for any holders to really influence the network and collectively influence the network. But I think the thing I'm most excited about here, and I know, Dagnum kind of keeps hammering on this Panasonic thing. The reason why is because as excited as we all are about what the DoD is doing and some of these national DigiFoundry members behind closed doors, it seems like Panasonic's going to create this watershed moment where, it's going to be enterprise on public. And all of a sudden that's visible. People can connect the dots. They can start extrapolating the network growth over time and what that means for DAG holders, what that means for Constellation, both in like kind of the mind space of Web3, but then also in terms of what that means for the tokenomics with snapshots. It's really an exciting time. We're still waiting to see what kind of comes out of the hackathon. We're waiting to see, what Panasonic does. And, it's interesting. You kind of think, what's Panasonic going to do day one? What's Panasonic going to be doing 2 years from then? And that's, there's tremendous upside risk there. And so the enterprise on public for me has me the most excited about Constellation, because a lot of utility tokens in Web3 that are going after enterprise is a lot of trials and testing behind closed doors. Maybe it gets announced, but you're not seeing a lot of activity translate to public networks. And I think the hypergraph and the Constellation ecosystem are going to demonstrate, how that can actually work on chain for everyone to see over the coming years. And I'm really excited about that.
And also IBM as well. Remember, IBM or another participant in this hackathon with Panasonic. I think there was a post Dagnam you put out a while ago about Oracle building a metagraph. Snowflake, which I believe is doing something with Door and the data from the Door devices, which I think Snowflake is like a $50 billion company or $45 billion company. You have all these large enterprise conglomerates that, to your guys' points, are, at least starting to dip their toe into DLT, and it's on Constellation. So I think, and look, I think the enterprise is really exciting. The government is really exciting. But what's most exciting to me is Constellation are versatile enough to do both at the same time. And that just proves why this company and project has immense staying power.
Hey, Court, I would love to kind of get your insights because I think the most obvious use case for the hypergraph and snapshots is like IoT and verifying data in the real world as it makes its way into Web3 in a tamper-proof way. But I think something I struggle with personally is wrapping my head around all the different ways that maybe more traditional business, more traditional business plans or business, I guess, opportunities can translate into snapshots and leverage the public network of Constellation. I have to admit, I apologize. Like, my understanding of Intrana is not the best. I get it high level, and I think you're using two of the best tech partners possible. But maybe you could just give me some insight on how your business kind of leverages that, and it would probably help me understand more how that can translate to other businesses that aren't necessarily IoT in nature.
Yeah, so if you can imagine, let's say, every business in America having a ledger of some kind, as well as internal mechanisms for tracking of merchandise, time slots for employees, etc., etc. They are all depending on very specific solutions, and they're all connected to Web 2, quote unquote, companies. That's not necessarily a bad thing, except for the fact that they are kind of relying on pre-quantum computing built solutions. And that's okay. A lot of them can't afford quantum computing resistant things. that's a very large bill to foot, right? What we do is allow people to come and use solutions that are built for their enterprise using this technology. So plug and play, tried and true, very simple or as complex as they might need solutions so that they can day one, without having to shut down, remake everything, go through and actually just turnkey use everything the way that they already have without, having downtime. And a good example of that, news. For the hackathon, we have a partnership with a company called Alyssa Edge, a man named Ryan Wallerstein. He's from the Department of Homeland Security way back in the day. And we are creating, news, but on chain. And they are a wonderful, anti-money laundering, CFT, cybercrime, informative type of company. And he aggregates stories from people that he knows or sources that he trusts, stories that have no bias, information about what is actually happening in the world. And from that, we're going to aggregate quite a bit of data, different news stories and sources, and allow people to create collections such that, one, there's accountability for what is reported, but also, two, so that, we know what has been said and who said it for forever. That immutability aspect for the news has been something, and history in large is something that we have always kind of given to the victors of certain conflicts. And this is a way for us to make sure that, it is applicably and appropriately preserved for the long term. So just one example. Another example, I'm not going to say too much about it, but let's say fantasy sports with the PGF. So, they're on UFC Fight Pass, Professional Grappling Federation, and it's all jiu-jitsu. The Gracies, Brandon McCaffrey, they're all very good at what they do. That's another great way of providing proof, immutability of historic events, even if it's a sporting event, in a way that other people will be able to go and look back on, and then we can provide advanced analytics based on that data that is then provided to the metagraphs.
That's really cool. Thanks for that insight.
Yeah, Cord, I could listen to you talk about this stuff all day long. I thought I'd just real quick, just kind of, it's not a speculation hat per se. It's more of a asking questions hat, you know. But I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hopefully this works. Okay, hopefully, yeah, okay. So I got this one. Hopefully it'll let me jump over to the other. But so I'm looking at this, right? So like just me back in 2021, 2022, you know, studying DAG, studying everything, you know, again, this is 100% just, you know, again, there's no way to know anything on who's involved with anything, right? Talking, watching these congressional testimonies, etc. But so we got this December 22nd, 2022, right? And we got the Department of Defense announces joint war-fighting cloud capability procurement. And who's with that? So we've got Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, you know, and then hopefully it'll let me jump over here. Hopefully it's sharing correctly. Yeah, share this tab instead. Okay, so then you jump here. This is just a couple days ago, August 7th, 2024. And, you know, we're looking at trying to secure data. So what I start to ask myself is, going back to this tab, so they're looking at a cloud capability platform with major organizations, right? And then jumping back to this tab, we're starting to see, hopefully it is working. Oh, hell, I may have lost it. But my point is, we're getting to this point where we're seeing this coming to fruition. And they're talking about public versus private, right? So how is that going to be secured? So I'm sure, as we all know, there's the private version of the secure data transfer, but how does that become public is the question. So here we are talking about, I'm not spotting where it says the public and private at the moment, but here we are, ultimate with 4 cloud providers: Google, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and Oracle. So it's like I start asking questions, you know, who's securing that data? Who could it be? I don't know. But from my vantage point, you know, I'm seeing one organization that is, you know, working with the DoD, making those secure proofs with the Department of Defense. And then you got the National DigiFoundry. Cord, I could listen to you talk about your stuff all day long. I had the honor to be on the first secure information sharing group call. I wasn't, I didn't continue with that for certain reasons. But I know that so you have all these important groups working on important things, working with important people, you know, creating these proofs that really intrigue the heck out of me is kind of what I wanted to get at. So I'm just asking questions. I don't know who's behind these, but I know one organization that has proven that they can secure data in transit. So just a thought.
They could very well be Solana and Tron. We don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah,
that made me laugh really, really hard. That was the best joke I've heard in a long time.
Thanks, man. I'll do your kids' birthdays too. Trust me, I'm good.
Yeah, and actually in that document, I'll see if I can, because you and I, you know, so if those of you who haven't been following my Telegram group, you know, I drop in and Brad drops in, you know, these information on a daily basis. I try not to like flood my Twitter feed with a lot of this stuff because, you know, it kind of overwhelms people. But so the direct quote in there is, we're finding that sometimes the JWCC and the public clouds is the right space for their workload. But at other times we find that it's actual private clouds, right? So they're going to be using public clouds, which is pretty groundbreaking announcement there, that they're going to be using public clouds and private clouds working together. And it's the same stuff with a lot of the space stuff that I've been sharing. You know, this space domain, and the government's going to be getting data from public space people like SpaceX, or even AST Space Mobile. That's another company that I've talked about a lot. They have they secured a partnership with the government a couple of months ago. So it's this hybrid between public and private data is going to be huge moving forward.
What I will say about that is interoperability and scalability are key. And infinite horizontal scalability is one of the most important things that Constellation provides. And that being said, I'm not going to leak any information, but they're doing very, very important work. And it can't be overstated how important the amount of protection that they offer to businesses and to governments is. And sooner rather than later, everyone is going to need Constellation. And that's the reality.
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting point here, right? And I've been a big believer in early Web3 adoption really being the private networks. And you've seen that, right? You've seen private networks kind of leading the funding, leading the amount of projects that are building on them, whether it's private Ethereum, whether it's Corda, whether it's some of the Hyperledger, whether it's some of these other platforms. But ultimately, just like cloud, it's got to be a mix. And what's so compelling is the different ways that Constellation, has between the staking your DAG or the delegation. It allows the hypergraph public, portion to be really competitive with, private instances in terms of cost, and potentially significantly less. And then because of the nature and the way the hypergraph was created and what Constellation's doing, security's paramount. You're kind of not taking a step back there. And so it really positions them incredibly well to be one of these, public infrastructures that's first adopted in a kind of hybrid deployment, right? Where maybe you still have some things in a private network, but with the interoperability and because of the economics and the advantages of the hypergraph, being able to use that as your go-to public layer, because it's faster than Ethereum, because it's infinitely scalable, because you have delegators changing the economics, right? You're not running your own nodes. You don't bear that cost. With delegators, maybe it's incredibly cheap compared to what you would have underwrote a couple of years ago, or maybe even, you're making money to just use the public layer. And so that's incredibly compelling. And, the time for Constellation and the hypergraph is now, right? Like, we've been building towards, having the tools to kind of showcase the technology for a long time. And we finally have those tools coming through. And now with the change in the tokenomics with metanomics, things are all kind of like coming to this singularity of the network being able to finally kind of, hit, it's finally able to really like showcase the technology and, hit like as hard as it really should have been able to hit this whole time. And so I'm pretty excited about what that'll mean.
Yeah, I mean, like what I'm putting up here, like right now, I mean, it's only a matter of time before securing your public data is a requirement by the federal government. I mean, at least here in the United States, because you see these attacks and these ransomware stuff happening almost now on a daily basis. And this kind of stuff can't go on much longer. I mean, it's just a matter of time before one of these people, gets into something super critical like our power grids and holds that hostage. And now with AI advancing, and it's in everybody's hands, literally these off-the-shelf tools, these attacks are only increasing because it's just making it easier for these people to launch these types of attacks. So you need a way to secure your network. And that's one of the benefits of using blockchain. And that's one of the benefits of Constellation's network is you can secure the underlying data and you don't have to change anything. So like all these hospital networks that have their own software that they use, they don't have to replace anything. They can use all of the stuff that are already using, that they've already spent tens of millions of dollars to implement in these hundreds of hospitals that are within each one of these networks. They don't have to do anything. They can just keep it. But they're securing their underlying data with the addition of adding the hypergraph component to it. So, yeah, I mean, this was actually pretty big stuff today. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward, like what actually happens with this announcement. But to sort of circle back and to close here, what led up to this space was the announcement that they're actually meeting with the Undersecretary of Defense. So that, again, that shows, that should show people how serious at least the government thinks that this technology is. I can't make anybody talk about this. I don't know why other people online don't talk about this, but if you sort of do your own research, you could see that the government and big enterprises like Panasonic, IBM, Microsoft, and all of the people that are involved in the National DigiFoundry, the National Department of Treasury, the National Science Foundation, NASA, Space Force, all these people think that this technology is important. So it's just a matter of time before that stuff starts to bleed through to the public network, which is what most people here are excited for, is like public network usage. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody had any closing thoughts, but that demo, I think, should really showcase and highlight the types of things that can be done on this chain, the types of data that you can validate on this chain, and why it's important. This isn't just a network where you can mint tokens or mint NFTs. You're securing data, and literally the data can be from any source. And with the advent of these delegators, anybody can participate in it. Literally anybody that has DAG can participate in bandwidth. You own a percentage of this network, and that's a game changer.
DAG nodes are the ultimate digital real estate, the ultimate Fifth Avenue on Manhattan in virtual digital form. And as we hear more about these hacks, as we hear possibly, threats from China, other nefarious actors, I think stuff for Constellation's only going to heat up. And I've been following this company for years, and the future has never been brighter for this project, for this company, and for this token. So, diamond hands, baby.
Diamond hands.
What this does is open up a whole realm of possibilities for autonomous vehicles, drone swarms, utility-based drone swarms, weaponized drone swarms for protection of our nation and others. This is something that is going to completely catch people by surprise when everything is already up and running, it's going to be too late. So good luck, everybody. Thank you, Dagnum, for doing this, and everybody for being here. That's my 2 cents on the matter. Liberum commercium.
All right.
Thank you, Dagnum.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, man. And anytime. And it's going to be not too much longer, I think, before right here. I think we have moved from here a little bit closer to here. We might even be here. Blockchain is mission critical. All right, everybody. This was a recorded space, so it'll be available for replay instantly. And hope you subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're on X, please give me a follow. And again, most of this stuff I have dropped relentlessly in Telegram. So, if you want to follow along in Telegram, that's usually where all these info dumps happen. And with that, we will say adieu and take it easy, everybody.
Peace out.